Hello, hello, hello. Let's get started. I'm Natasha. Nice to meet you, everyone. I am a visual description of myself. I'm a white Latina woman in a room with a poster of Buddha with curly brown hair and a pink shirt. I am zooming in from the indigenous lands of Kesh, Tonga, and Chumash. A little bit more about myself. I am attending the school, the USC University, University of Southern California, studying theater and film. Apart from that, I also produce and direct documentaries and narratives about the climate crisis and its effect on young people. I wanted to join this awesome event and this session in particular because I look up to Julie and her career as a producer to not only tell stories that move the world forward, but also do it in a conscious process. So thank you so much, Julie, for being here.
That's so generous of you. Thank you for having me. I'm also happy to be here. My name is Julie Christeas. I'm a Greek, American, Jewish, white woman coming to you live from Lenape lands in New Jersey, where I live. I'm in my home office in a green lace top with some movie posters behind me. And I think you can see a gray couch here as well, and excited to be answering some questions while we have some time left this evening.
Awesome.
I see one from Shannon here, who's asking some simple changes that I made to my filmmaking process that's had a huge impact for our environment. So the biggest change that I made, Shannon, was speaking with directors about their vision in a sustainable set. So my job is to bring a director's vision to life, and producers do everything from building the team to finding the financing to helping with the casting to being, like myself, a holistic producer. So I'm on set, I'm the ally of the director. I know all of the departments and all of the jobs and how to team up and have the proper equipment and give everyone the tools they need to be the most successful. And part of changing the system in filmmaking to go from what we've always done, which is be extraordinarily wasteful, to working green, is to figuring out how we can achieve the creative, how we can, with every member of our team, set everyone up to do their highest caliber of work, bring their most artistic level of excellence to this script, to this work, and do it in a way that doesn't harm people and the planet. And that conversation is a way in, because what I've realized is it impacts every single department. I can tell you that there's, probably a dozen things on every project that are always the same and that you can include in any budget. And then the rest has got to be specific to the script and what the director and their department heads have visioned for the work. But easy things that you can do, number one, is have a conversation with the team that you want to have a green set. You can go to the Producers Guild of America. They have a great set of free tools, the Peach Guide, the Pear Guide, that give you, 400 odd line items that can be green, and instruction on how to make them green. The Environmental Media Association, the EMA, which I now this year sit on the board of, has a green seal program that you can apply for, and the application correlates directly with that initial PGA green guide that they have on the website. You can make a choice to eliminate single-use plastic. You can make an immediate choice to say, I don't want to dispose of food waste. I want to compost. Do some research, depending on where you are, to find local gardens and places that will receive your compost. That's one of the biggest issues about choosing to compost is like, well, now what do I do with it? Reach out to people like me who have had successful productions that have achieved green seals and green gold seals to say, just like you're doing now, are there any things I can do right off the bat that improve my sustainability factor while I'm on set? I would say really look at your vehicles and your gas consumption and your generators. So that's a huge killer for every film, whether you're union or non-union. If there's a way for you to have hybrid vehicles and or electric vehicles and do your best, which is, I know, a tough negotiation when it comes to talent, to look at trailers and honey wagons and all of these things that use so much gasoline. It's going to make a huge difference in your budget, but also in your carbon footprint. And shipping and travel. Where am I working? Can I hire locally? How many people do I have to bring in? Where are they staying? How many cars do I actually have? Where are the places around where I want to be that I can send my team to shop locally? Are there lumber yards? Are there refurbishing plants that actually have recycled things that I could reuse on my set? Are there thrift shops where I could potentially purchase things? And is there a local church or a community center that might want to receive donations when I'm finished? Is there a way that I could help the community when I go with the things that I have that I don't want to throw away? So it's a lot, but it's there are tools for you to start piecing together what a sustainable show looks like, for sure. Wow. And thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. I also invite everyone to fill out the poll that we're trying to measure the impact of the whole panel. Aside from that, I also had a follow-up question. In terms of the content or the scripts that Tandem Pictures is producing, right? What do you think is lacking in terms of films about the crisis? What would you like to see more of?
It's such a hard subject matter, climate change, because it's awfully scary. And the deeper you dig into it, sometimes it's hard to feel positive. I would personally love to see two things happen. One, on the more serious side, which is really have a conversation more around the result of what is already happening, which is climate displacement and migration. And the numbers around climate displacement and migration are staggering, and I think do incentivize people to be a little bit more urgent in their behavior when you start to realize just in America, 500,000 people have been displaced, lost their homes, had to move because of the impact of climate change. And on just as urgent, but a less scary level, in every script and every story, there's an opportunity to get messaging about the environment into your work. So on a movie that came out during COVID, Black Bear, that I made with a wonderful director, Lawrence Michael Levine, and Aubrey Plaza, and Christopher Abbott, and Sarah Gadon were in it. There's a scene in the kitchen, and something we did was, instead of having Chris make dinner with the usual things of like steak or chicken or, again, the meat industry is a big carbon creator. We thought, what's something small we could do? Well, we could have him be making a vegetable soup. So Chris was chopping carrots, celery, and all sorts of things. It's small, but it's insidious messaging, right? Like every time a character makes a meal, certainly a romantic meal, it can be a vegetarian one, it can be a vegan one. And beyond that, a step further is how in your storytelling can you have messaging around climate? And I would really say, for all the comedies out there, I'm working on one right now, no one really has their hand in the pot of being like the climate messaging comedian. There's a real opportunity here, actually, to bring humor and attention to something through a medium and a genre in which people are really open to hearing things that are difficult in nature, which of course is comedy. So the more you can look at your work and say, oh, that this character's talking about social injustice. Well, climate injustice is directly related to social injustice. Couldn't they be talking about that? The answer is yes, they could be. Yeah. And again, as a producer, as a person who's choosing the work, I have the ability to ask the writer, what do you think about this? But the more, we as executives, we as producers, we as writers, we as directors are thinking about this subject and asking ourselves, how can we find ways to incorporate it into our work? It can be the smallest of details to having an entire documentary about climate change, right? I mean, Al Gore made a brilliant documentary now 20 years ago. It's time for another one of that caliber.
Wow. Yes. And it is very humorous sometimes, the lengths we go, right, to be green. I sometimes.
And I'm not a comedian, so how you find the humor, I don't know. But I'm sure some brilliant person is going to come up with a great way to expose behavior, juxtapose behavior, the old guard and the new guard, where we might end up if we don't pay attention in a way that's really palatable, because it's surrounded in a lot of just really good humor.
Yeah. Well, we have some more time for Q&A, so please feel free, everyone, to send it in the Q&A section of the session, not the event. And you can also unmute yourself and ask it yourself. Oh.
I see something else. Lee Medeiros, pronoun she, her, is saying that you just finished a TV dramedy script about migration. Oh, this is great. So this is right up your alley. That's amazing. And this is something too that I didn't speak about, writers' rooms. But there's a great opportunity in TV because it's it's real long form storytelling. So you can not only do it in one episode, you could have a theme running across your entire season that might culminate in something really interesting around climate change, climate injustice, climate migration.
Yeah. And I'm from Miami, and there's climate gentrification happening. Developers are displacing people and building on land above sea level to prevent flooding. So there's so many intersectional issues happening. So that's another question that I had is, what is your understanding of intersectionality, and how does it impact the work that you do as a producer?
Sure. I mean, we describe ourselves at Tandem Pictures as intersectional environmentalists. And I said a little bit about this in my introduction, but I started my company because I wanted to give more opportunity to women. I came from an independent film company where I was an executive across both production and development. I was the only woman surrounded by all white cisgender men. And I just thought to myself, well, there's got to be a way to tell the stories I'm passionate about, and also, as a person in the position to hire, give more opportunity to people. And once I had that light bulb, it very quickly became real to me that it wasn't just women who needed attention paid in equitable hiring. It was, people of color and LGBTQIA and disabilities and age and so many underrepresented groups. And the first people impacted by social injustice are also the first people impacted by climate injustice. And honestly, it was a gut check thing. I was like, this is just very disingenuous to tell stories with filmmakers from underrepresented communities, and do it in a way that's harmful. Mm-hmm. And I honestly just made a decision that I didn't want to work that way. And I didn't want to not acknowledge that there had to be a better way to practice this beautiful craft of storytelling that I love so much, and team creation that I love so much. Yeah. And so that's really what intersectionality means to me, and means is that there is an intersection of social injustice and climate injustice, and that they are, inextricably linked, for better and for worse, and for the entirety of our discussion. And it's and the discussion, unfortunately, is only going to get more and more robust, because I feel like this summer everyone had a light bulb, really for the first time in America, that, I live in New Jersey. Maybe we've had one tornado warning the entire time I've lived here. This summer, I think we had half a dozen, in such a close proximity to each other, and severe tornado warnings where at 3:00 in the morning, our phone alarms were going off that literally a tornado was right over our home, and that we should get to a first floor and take shelter. Had to wake up our son, go downstairs to the foyer. Really, wow. In an area that it didn't, again, a privileged viewpoint, it didn't occur to me that I would be affected by climate so soon. And I think for many people, it was the same thing, that this summer we saw, from, the fires in the Midwest, to the flooding in the South, to the flooding in the East, in New York and New Jersey, right? People literally floating, people dying, not being able to get out of their homes with their babies and their children, losing their infants in waters that they couldn't save them in. Yeah. This is happening to us right now. Mm-hmm. And we will certainly get better at managing it, but wouldn't it be great if we could change our behavior so we didn't make it any worse?
Yeah. And hearing and seeing all this disaster, right? And especially as a young person, sometimes I feel despair of my future, right? I'm like, what is it going to look like when I reach 40, and hopefully I have a big career and I'm producing and blah, blah, blah. So how do you personally deal with despair, especially in the artistic process of from pitch to execution?
I will tell you, the artistic process doesn't bring me despair. Actually, that's part of what brings me happiness, because this is an insane industry and a very bizarre time to be alive. But I feel I'm still surrounded by some of the, brightest, most interesting, most out of the box thinkers, no matter what project I'm working on. But what you're referencing is really important, because it is hard to stay positive all the time when you're practical about saying, well, climate change is happening, and these are the causes today, and predicted these are what's going to happen in 2030 and 40 and 50, unless, right? And we can't be Pollyanna about the unless and just hope that someone's going to come up with something that fixes the problem. We all have to do our part. But if you are someone out there who's struggling with despair, just know that you're not alone, that this is a huge mental health burden to acknowledge what's happening on our planet right now. As a young person, as a person with a young child, my son is 6. I think about what 2050 is going to look like, and it brings me a lot of despair. But finding that work-life balance where you can appreciate your life and appreciate whether it's your creative partners or your life partners, the places you might be able to go, the food that you have on your table, the bike ride that you can take. I personally love to run. Finding what it is that you like to do that brings you an open heart and a positive viewpoint where you can say, I'm not going to eliminate the despair, but I'm going to take it with me. I'm just going to take it with me with the fear and the sadness and all the things and move forward, because we do have opportunities in every moment of now to make practical changes. And we don't succeed all the time, but if you're conscious about it, you can succeed a lot of the time. So there's 100% reason to be hopeful. We're having summits just like this. How can you not be hopeful thinking about all of the people who are involved, right? In Climate Week in New York, at the HCC here today, who are taking panels and listening to speakers and asking questions about how can I make a difference with what I do in my job, in my life, in my work, at my company, with my future, with my trajectory. How can I be generous and be of service? That's hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of taking our sadness. Yes, and turning it, that's what art, I have here a poster that says, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And that's kind of that, right? Turning art to comfort, but also disturb, right? And ask questions. And again, going back to the systemic issue of things, how can we resist the system or question it or examine it through art?
Yes, and I was going to say, and ask the questions, whether you're involved in the arts or not. If you go to work to a place where you don't have an ability, which still happens all over the place, where there's no place to recycle your paper, your plastics, your glass, ask the question, why? My husband and I go on this annual family vacation to a place where his family has been going for like 40 years or something. And every year that I have gone, they don't recycle anything. And my husband and I would take home, the bags of the complex from when we were there, literally an entire car filled with other people's recycling, because we were like, well, we'll recycle it at home. That's what we'll do. And this year, they finally changed their practice, because enough people like us would knock on the office door and say, why don't you have a recycling dumpster? And the reason was always cost and administration and a million excuses. But through questioning, you can actually make some change. And that's, anywhere you work, a building that you live in. There's so many ways to reach people by being earnestly curious of, well, why don't we do this?
Yeah. And in that area of questioning, as a young PA or someone trying to climb the ladder, how can we respectfully, right, ask these questions without the fear of they're never gonna...
I know, it's such a delicate balance. I will say, right, as a producer who came up through the production office, so I coordinated, I production managed, I line produced, I field produced, I did all the jobs. I really, really, really believe and always practice that every single person on set has an invaluable contribution to make, and that I've hired them. So I might not even know what that valuable contribution is, but that they have earned my respect by nature of the fact that I've brought them onto this team. It's theirs to lose.
Yeah.
Things happen, but they've earned my respect by nature of the fact that I've hired them. And I'll tell you, some of the greatest ideas that happen, especially from PAs, because for people who don't know what production assistants do, a huge part of what they do is call and respond. So it's through their voice and their efforts and their great listening skills that the entire team knows at any given moment of the day what is happening so they can make their contribution to that moment, that scene, whatever it is that's meant to be happening on set that day. So a lot of amazing and astute observations happen from the PAs because they're literally looking at everything. They're looking at the entire pyramid, the hierarchy of production, and saying, I noticed that the costume department feels this way because we're doing this. Maybe we could change that for them. So I think, again, if you are a production assistant who's observing on set, gosh, I wish that just like when we have a safety talk in the morning, we had a sustainable talk in the morning. We could talk about where do we compost our food waste? Where do we recycle our plastics? Or better yet, where do we refill the bottles we've been given on set? What service are we using? Like TerraCycle or something, if because of COVID we have to have plastic single-use utensils. Where is that conversation on set? These are questions, and I think the great thing about being production assistants and coordinators is that you're not yet the boss. So you're allowed to ask, what is our set practice and how are we doing it so I can support your efforts? And if your UPM or your, assistant director or your producer is smart and they don't have these practices on set, they're going to take notice of that question. I'm going to say, well, we actually, we don't compost. And then you might say, well, actually, the last show I worked on did, and there's a great place that brought the bins and they did all the work for you. There's a way to have the conversation without feeling like you're jeopardizing your job. And I hope the more people that practice sustainability on set, the less and less young people will have that fear, because it's hard enough to enter the industry right now, especially through a pandemic, when the market has changed so drastically, and internships and opportunities that were once available have changed so drastically. I hope that this brand of conversation is something that's at least greeted with an open mind, and not anger towards the person raising the question. But I know it's a delicate balance to tread. I would say, if you see that the person in charge is particularly stressed, maybe that's not the moment. Maybe when they've gotten a hot cup of coffee or a tea or whatever it is they like, maybe that's the moment instead.
Cool. Yeah. So couple minutes left, please. We have 8 people in this session. We'd love to hear some new Q&As through the Q&A section or the chat, and if you have any specific questions, if you guys are working on a job or anything that pertains to your work, I'm happy to be specific about what you might be interested in for yourselves. We can take a few minutes to do so, and if not, Natasha and I will just keep talking. I have a question. This is a NYU event and such, so most of us, I think, are in college. What would you tell your college self? I know you went to Emerson. I see it in your LinkedIn. What would you tell your Emerson college self?
Oh God, what a question!
In terms of maybe career, like.
Well, I did not go to film school. For anyone wondering, I alluded to my circuitous path. My circuitous path was thinking I was going to go into medical school, because I've always been fascinated with the human brain. So I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And it wasn't until I was a senior in high school that I said, maybe I don't want to be a doctor. Maybe I'd like to go into entertainment. And I didn't know anything about entertainment other than front of the camera acting. So I actually got into NYU Tisch and Emerson on, what only must have been beginner's luck because I had nothing else. I had no experience and certainly didn't know what I was doing. But I went to Emerson because I had a good scholarship at that school, and I studied acting and walked away with a specialty in the classics and in Shakespeare in particular. So it's because of that training actually that makes me a really great ally in script development. And that makes me love stories so much. And also that makes me understand that it's not my story. It's not how would I change this. It's, how can this writer tell the most authentic version of their story? And those are all things that you learn when you study dramaturgy, and endeavor to act, which I was never any good at. But what I was really good at was text analysis, and that serves me to this day. But if I could give myself any advice from going to school, it would be that, sometimes first you choose a tract, and as a young person, you need to be obstinate and you need to believe 100% that you've chosen the right thing and that's what you're doing. But if it starts to feel like maybe you're interested in something else, or maybe that's not the right tract for you, be open to that little voice in you that's telling you that. Because I knew it in school, but I didn't want to quite let myself off the hook. And it wasn't until I had done some classical theater and things in New York for a while, and I finally said to myself, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't for me. And the other thing that I would tell myself is just that, what I tell my son and what I really try to put out there on set for all positions, which is that, every single person has a part to play, and every single person is a three-dimensional person here with a story and a heart and a past. And that we're so quick to judge or to fire, or to misunderstand or to get angry. And a little bit of empathy and compassion can go a really long way when it comes to being a good critical thinker and a great problem solver. And that's one of my really, I certainly make a lot of mistakes, but what I get right is that in the moment of crisis, I can be calm. And because I am respecting whomever it is that's having the crisis, I can help find a solution to move forward. So I would say, whatever it is you're endeavoring to do, value yourself and also value your classmates and the students around you. They deserve the kindness, love, and respect that you'd like to receive when being spoken to, or being put on a team with those people. And also, if you do end up on the right track, you're certainly going to cross those people over and over and over again. So, find your people, make work together, be active in the space together, use each other, especially if you are in film school. Look around you. You are the next great storytellers. Make your work together, find ways to support and lift and promote people that you think are super talented and doing it in a way that you respect.
Yes. And sustainability, right?
Yeah.
It's not only the earth, but sustainable relationships, right? How do we cultivate those? With empathy and understanding.
What a great point. It's the marathon of your career. If you're sprinting, you're going to be exhausted and not get a lot done. But if you look at it as a marathon, you're going to really want to keep your pace and make sure that you're able to run alongside a large group of people with many different types of personalities. That's a really good point, Natasha.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, last question, Lei.
Oh, I'm being asked to submit a script. Lee, you before you submit me a script, I am open because we met here. And something I say on any panel or university or anywhere I speak is now if you can't find me, you're not trying hard enough. So I am open to you. My email is all over the place on the internet. I think even my phone number.
Oh,
So, send me your information and remind me that we met here and that you're interested in talking about a climate related script, and we can have a Zoom just like this. Okay. And this way you're not sending a script into the void. We can talk about what it is, and I can let you know if it's right for Tandem, and if it's not, I can help point you in the right direction.
oh wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Um,
No worries. And
yes,
thank you
that's awesome.
guys for these wonderful questions and conversation, and for having me as part of the summit. Like I said, it's especially meaningful during Climate Week here in New York. So thank you.